Hello and welcome back to my channel What If Deku 2. Join us as we delve into the realms of fanfiction and fantasy, bringing you the best stories and discussions. Today, we're kicking off part 3 of our series, What If Introvert Deku Had a Flame Quirk? If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is Razuhfy from FanfictionNet. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now, let's dive into the fanfic. Friday. It was finally time to return back to school after the brief break given to Class 1A after the incident and the following media outcry. A day that Izuku wasn't looking forward to in all honesty. His face had been plastered across social media outlets. Not all negative, but nor were they all positive. Illegal? Of course. He was a minor. Did they care? Of course not. Whatever got them clicks and interactions. It left Izuku feeling bitter and jaded. Though, he knew on some level that things like this happened all the time with heroes due to their jobs, but still. He was just a kid. Brief headlines surged surrounding the Yaoyorozu family. None of them positive. Momo's parents wanted blood. With the amount of money they possessed and the sheer amount of suits backing them. Well, safe to say that settlements were out of the question. Izuku didn't blame them. The amount of vitriolic discourse surrounding their actions was astounding. How were they getting blamed for wanting to survive? How could you stare at a child and condemn them for doing what they believed to be the only option? Did these people think that he woke up one day and decided he was going to immolate 7 random people? The sheer stupidity and inadequacy. That sour feeling only seemed to grow in Izuku's chest. The more media he consumed, the angrier he got. Every post, every comment, every little backhanded compliment. The amount of negativity surrounding him and his classmates' actions completely outweighed the overwhelming concern and support from other pro-heroes and media journalists. Izuku didn't care because at the end of the day, the vocal majority were those who wished to see his downfall. He didn't regret what he had done. He'd never regret the fact he had wanted to live. Those villains had dug their own grave, and now they had to lay in them. Izuku stepped onto the subway cart, eyes focused on the floor as he meandered through the claustrophobic space. He could hear the whispers. Their failed attempts of scooting away. Some were even brazen enough to just stare. Brazen or just ignorant. Izuku didn't know, nor did he care. Heat seared in his chest, causing an incredibly uncomfortable itch to surface. One he ignored in favor of just staring out the window quietly, eyes not really gazing at anything. Did they deserve it? Izuku's fists balled up, and he was thankful that his mother had suggested taking his hoodie today. Green eyes slowly strayed away from the window, eyeing the individual who had voiced their question. He took in their appearance. Some businessman of some sort. Shoddy briefcase, mismatching undershirt with a stupid-looking tie. Off-brand dress shoes. Glasses and a stern but aged face. Izuku wanted to lash out. What kind of idiotic question was that? Did they deserve it? He could feel his quirk respond to his anger. It surged beneath his veins, aching for release. An itch that couldn't be scratched. Did I deserve it? Izuku questioned back numbly, eyes shifting back to the window. What kind of stupid? He cut himself off, shaking his head at the man's question. Are you not training to become a pro-hero? The man pressed once again. You would think that such a prestigious institute would teach children how to properly de-escalate a situation without resorting to extreme violence. A self-righteous prick, arrogant, annoying. The insults were flung in his mind, but Izuku kept his mouth shut, clenching his fists tighter in the pocket of his hoodie. He could feel embers forming from his fingers, responding to his aggravated state. Remember what I told you, Izuku. What people say about you isn't important. All that matters is how you feel about yourself. His mother's words sprang to mind. With them came another wave of anger. He had been turning the other cheek for years, whether it be to Bakugo or complete strangers. Izuku was a kind child. He knew this. He wasn't the sort to cause problems, nor did he ever go looking for them. But he was tired of being passive, tired of being submissive, tired of being underestimated. With a shake of the head, Izuku reached into his pockets before placing a pair of earbuds in his ears. He took out his phone before blasting music and ignoring everything around them. They wanted him to lash out, wanted to be proven right in their idiotic views of him. He wouldn't allow their words to bait him. If turning the other cheek got under their skin, then he'd gladly remain passive just to spite them. They wouldn't get a reaction out of him. Izuku didn't regret killing those men, and no one was going to change that. One life to save another. Did two wrongs make a right? Of course not. He wasn't advocating outright murder, but sometimes one life is worth more than another's. This was a lesson. A lesson he shouldn't have had to learn so young, but an important one regardless. As Izuku got closer to the school, his anxiety only grew, and with it, his anger. Even now, the media hounded and patrolled the security gates. There was so many of them. It was almost similar to when All Might had been revealed to be a teacher. Izuku wanted to scream. Loudly. Why? What was the point? Did these people take some kind of sick joy in their suffering? Was he not devoting his entire life to one day protect these very same people who'd vilify him? It was beginning to grate on him. Was this what his future truly held? All the good he would do would just be overshadowed. What was even the point? Midoriya, over here. The familiar voice snapped Izuku out of his downward spiral, offering him a brief amount of respite. Turning towards the direction, he spotted Shoto sitting in the passenger side of the car he had been dropped off in when visiting Momo. Todoroki-kun. He offered the boy a small smile, one filled with relief. He briefly jogged his way over to his classmate, stopping near the door and offering the boy a nod. His green eyes strayed towards the driver's side, eyebrows furrowing at the unknown woman. Ah, another one of Todoroki-kun's mothers. Hello, I'm Izuku Midor. Yeah, I know, kid. The beautiful woman interrupted nonchalantly. Little Shoto talks about you. The blue-haired woman leaned toward Shoto, blue eyes gleaming dangerously. So, you're one of the kids that shed blood, eh? Mother. Shoto said sharply, eyes briefly shifting towards the woman. The woman ignored Shoto's words in favor of staring directly into Izuku's eyes. She made him feel small. There was something in her eyes that made Izuku's skin crawl. How did it feel, eh? She questioned with a terrifying smile, blue eyes half-lidded. You came out on top at the expense of human life. It was a rush. No. How did it feel to stand atop the corpses of the weak? Her words stabbed into him, rooting him in place. This woman, she was a hero, or rather, had been a hero? The look in her eyes. It reminded him of that guy with the hands all over his body. She seemed artificial and manic. Izuku felt his blood rush, and with it, his flames clawed their way to the surface. He could feel embers lick at his palms, and as he was about to channel his flames, the sound of the car door slamming shut snapped Izuku out of his deadlock with the woman. That's enough, mother. Thank you for the ride. Shoto spoke, diffusing the situation. The blue-haired woman didn't seem bothered by her son's words. Her smile only seemed to grow larger as she leaned closer to the passenger side window. A shame, she replied soothingly. I'll be seeing you, Izuku. She was off not a moment later, leaving the two boys on the sidewalk. Izuku spoke with furrowed brows. She was scary. Shoto merely shrugged his shoulders. As death, she is father's second wife. She is not sane. The dual-haired boy left it at that before turning towards the security gate with a soft sigh. They're everywhere. Izuku glanced towards the gate, withholding the glare that wished to surface. They're obnoxious. A black limousine pulled up next to the curb, a few feet away from the two boys. Momo immediately stepped out of the luxury vehicle, waving off the help from her butler before slinging her backpack across her shoulders. Midoriya-san, Todoroki-san. She greeted politely before waving to her personal driver. I see the devil waits for no one, she mumbled quietly, staring at the security gate. Yaoyorozu-san, Izuku greeted with a small smile. Todoroki merely offered the girl a polite nod. Ashido-san and Gyro-san texted me earlier, warning me about this. Momo spoke quietly, withholding the urge to sigh. When will it end? Perhaps they take some sort of sick pleasure in what they do. Shoto offhandedly comments as he begins to march towards the large crowd of journalists and media reporters. Watching people suffer is their kink. Don't call it that, Todoroki-kun, Izuku mumbled with a blush, following after his friend. Makes it sound weird. Am I not correct in my assumption? He questions back with a raised brow. Perhaps his theory has some form of merit. It wouldn't surprise me. Momo supported with a small smile, giggling to herself when Izuku groaned in embarrassment. Why you guys need to stop imitating Ashido-san? The green-haired teen mumbled. She's bad enough. Their short conversation was interrupted a moment later as several men and women immediately bombarded them, questioning them about the Asti incident. Simply saying no comment wasn't enough. Questions, accusations, ridiculous assumptions. It was tiring. It was grating. Annoying. It only served to aggravate Izuku. The pyro quirk user's shoulder checked a random reporter out of his way before staring directly into a random shoulder-mounted camera. They deserved it. I don't regret what I did. Green eyes flashed fiercely as Izuku snarled in annoyance. You want someone to vilify, then take a good look in the mirror. I did what I had to do to survive. Blame me if you want. I don't care. My friends are alive, and that's all that matters. Izuku's nose curled in anger before he rose his palm towards the man's camera, slapping it aside in anger. Get that camera out of my face. Once more, Izuku proceeded to shoulder aside the reporters, allowing Todoroki and Yaoyorozu to follow after him. His words had briefly shocked them, not truly expecting him to blow up. To them, he was soft-spoken if not a bit awkward. Anger just didn't seem to fit on Izuku. The trio passed through the gates, causing the electronic doors to immediately slam shut, forcing the reporters away from the gates. Midoriya, are you okay? Shoto questioned, staring at his friend. Izuku shook his head, opting to ignore Shoto's question. Let's just go to class. He continued to walk forward, hands clenching tightly in the pocket of his hoodie. Yaoyorozu grimaced at his tone, sparing Shoto a glance before shrugging her shoulders. She didn't fault the boy for his anger and annoyance. While a majority of media outlets had praised them, it didn't help that the minority were the loudest. 1,000 compliments don't overshadow 50 vitriolic voices. Voices that screamed and ranted, berated them while smearing their faces through the mud. It was easy to focus on the negativity because it was always the loudest. Being a decent person was expected. What good does support do when it isn't there to lend a shoulder? Izuku glared down at his desk, mood fully sour after his brief interaction with the news and media outlets. What was the point of it all? Who cares what he thought? Who cared why he had done what he did? All people wanted to hear about was the next big scandal. A pro-hero committing fraud or skirting the laws or even having an affair. But a couple of teenagers training to become heroes getting attacked and forced to fend for themselves was the next big scandal. What a load of essential. Good morning, class. Aizawa mumbled quietly as he casually strolled into the room. I won't say this often, so don't expect it, but I'm glad that you're all here, safe and sound. Izuku glanced up at his homeroom teacher, spotting the various bandages laced across the man's body. The tired-looking man even had some sort of back brace, likely realigning his spine or something. Well, he did get slammed through several benches, traveling nearly 69 meters in less than a second. As for recent events, Aizawa mimed air quotes as he spoke. The HPSC is now breathing down our necks. What does that mean? You're wondering? He paused for a moment, slowly leaning on his desk as he continued. It means if we don't shape up. Another air quote. Our prestigious institute will have to follow HPSC regulations, and with those regulations come several miles of yellow tape. Now, none of you know what this means, and frankly, I don't have the time or clearance to explain to you all why that is. That's life, children. Learn to accept it. It's not fair. It sucks. It will punch you and then kick you when you're down. He glanced at 3 particular students before speaking his next words. I'm sure you've all seen the news. Social media is one hell of a thing, no? His rhetoric question caused some of the students to grimace. Some even sent some not-so-subtle glances to the 3 students in question. I'm sure there's 3 particular students in this classroom who are suffering more than everyone else. We all know who it is. It's not a secret. Aizawa sighed to himself, watching the 3 students in question react to his words. At the end of the day, you 3 did what had to be done. You may not like it. Hell, you may not even accept it. But that's the reality of the situation. I'm not going to sit here trying to convince you one way or another. I don't possess the necessary qualifications to handle these issues, but I am a cynical realist. What's done is done, and there is no changing it. Midoriya, Todoroki, and Yaoyorozu. Aizawa spoke, staring directly at the 3 students in question. You 3 have multiple sessions with Hound Dog for the next several months. Whether you wish to talk about your issues or not is up to you. However, I urge you 3 to do so regardless. Now, you can also ignore my words, but these sessions are also being graded as assignments. They are mandatory. Of course they'd be, Izuku mumbled to himself quietly. It was never simple with Aizawa-sensei. The rest of you aren't being forced to have sessions with Hound Dog, however. I urge you all to schedule them regardless. There is no understating the traumatic experience you've all gone through. Ignore what the outside world is saying. They do not matter. Do you all want to be heroes? Some of the students mumbled their affirmations. Aizawa's eyes narrowed dangerously. I said, do you or do you not still want to be heroes? Or would you rather I drop you from the hero course? You all want to go Gen Ed? Spend the remainder of your time as the normal students of UA High. This time the students roared their disagreements. Aizawa nodded his head before continuing. Then I suggest you heed my advice. I'm not here to force you to do anything you don't wish to do. I wouldn't blame any of you for wanting to drop out of the class, nor would I blame your parents for wishing to pull you from this class. All eyes are on you now. Class 1A is now infamous, even more so now than it already was. You all beat back a group of villains, hell-bent on causing chaos and death. Be proud of yourselves, Aizawa complimented. I am. Without you all, I wouldn't be here today. He offered them a chagrined smile, but it was gone a moment later. However, I must also reprimand all of you for disobeying a direct order. I told you all to leave and you didn't. So for that, a pop quiz and 800-word essay on listening to your superiors. The entire class groaned angrily. Suck it up. You're lucky I don't give you all detention. The pro-hero mumbled quietly to himself before sighing and speaking once more. I should also mention this. The annual a sports festival, is around the corner. I'm sure you all know what that is, yes? Izuku furrowed his eyebrows before slowly raising his hand in the air. He spoke once Aizawa gestured. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Aizawa shrugged his shoulders, asking a rhetoric question back to his student. What do you think I'm saying, problem child? Izuku made a face at the nickname before speaking. Are you saying that the sports festival is still going to happen, so soon after the villain attack in Usi? The pro-hero sighed to himself as he answered. Unfortunately, this is one of those things that cannot be avoided. If we don't host the event, the HPSC has even more of a reason to force you, to become regulated. Principal Nizu wants the sports festival to continue to show the world that you will not falter, even after a major attack such as Usti. So, we're just guinea pigs? Shoto questioned rhetorically. You said it, not I. Aizawa shrugged. Frankly, I think the sports festival continuing is somewhat dubious. You would essentially be mocking the League of Villains. It could provoke them into attacking again, and while it isn't out of the realm of possibility, they clearly have a goal. To kill All Might went unsaid, but everyone knew it regardless. So long as the #1 hero in Japan taught at UA, every class was at risk of being targeted. It just so happened that Class 10 was to be the target. Is this public knowledge? Momo questioned with furrowed brows. It will be before the school day is over, Aizawa answered. However, we are offering a bit of leeway for this year's sports festival. Instead of the event happening 2 weeks after the start of the semester, it is being pushed back to a month. Use this time wisely. The training grounds are open for all of you, and I expect you all to utilize this extra time. Show the world what you can do. All the top pro heroes will be watching. Impress them. Show them why you deserve to be a hero. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Izuku stared down at his katsudon, picking at his pork with a frown. His thoughts were muddy at best. With everything that had happened, he was beginning to realize just how difficult his goal actually was. Don't get him wrong, Izuku always knew the oath to being a hero would be a difficult one, but he just hadn't expected it to be so mentally taxing at the beginning. School wasn't the issue. He'd always done decently well when it came to school work. But outside factors were beginning to affect him. He knew that they shouldn't. The words of strangers truly meant nothing to him. Who cared what they thought? But the fact that it was bothering him. He stabbed at his food, breaking off a piece of pork before shoving it in his mouth. Whoa, dude. What'd the meat do to you? Gyro asked with a raised brow, slurping down her own noodles. Izuku glanced at the girl, cheeks growing a bit red. Sorry, I've just been annoyed. His eyes returned to his lunch as he leaned his head against the palm of his hand. I guess I just can't get over what people are saying about us. Gyro frowned at the boy's tone as she replied. Come on, dude. Who cares what a bunch of nobodies gotta say about us? Izuku shook his head with a sigh. That's exactly the issue I'm having. I shouldn't be getting annoyed, but I am. To me, it sounds like you dislike being the center of attention. Momo spoke up, briefly pausing in her quest to devour her mountain of food. Out of everyone in our class, you're the one who's most qualified to be a pro hero. Perhaps you're taking their words to heart because you know how difficult it is to achieve something as grand as becoming a pro. I'd rather they just keep their opinions to themselves. He mumbled in response, eyes returning to his uneaten food. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean it needs to be shared. Woo-woo, Mina cooed with a teasing smile as she saddled up next to the boy, practically sitting on his leg. Never did I think I'd ever see a grumpy Izuku. The aforementioned boy blushed at the physical contact, only slightly squirming at Mina's closeness. Sorry for being a downer. I've just been so annoyed the last few days. It's not as if you don't have a right to be angry, Midoriya. Shoto spoke as he quietly slurped his cold soba. My father's lawyers have been suing left and right. Tons of media outlets are covering the issues. He glanced towards Yaoyorozu, nodding her way. The Yaoyorozu family is hitting the media even harder. It's gaining international traction, which, unfortunately, means that our story is only growing larger. American tabloids are even commenting on it. Their #1 hero even had some things to say about it. The dual-haired boy placed his chopsticks down before taking out his phone and pulling up a video. In the video, a beautiful and muscular woman with blonde hair, not unlike All Might's, spoke of her disapproval and dislike of Japan's media outlets and their coverage on the Usti incident. Whoa, she's pretty, Mina complimented with a raised eyebrow. Wait, the #1 hero in the United States is a woman? Gyro asked in surprise. Star and Stripe. Izuku mumbled with a smile as he stared at Shoto's phone, gaining the attention of his friends. Her real name is Kathleen Bate, and if you think she's familiar, it's because she is. She takes heavy inspiration from All Might due to having been saved by him when he was in the US. Her quirk is incredibly powerful. It lets her alter reality with anything she touches so long as she says its name. Wodum. Mina and Gyro spoke in awe. If the top pro heroes of other nations are taking notice of this situation, then it's going to only get even worse. Momo mumbled as she shook her head. It's not the first time a group of villains targeted up and coming students who wish to be pro heroes, but those students didn't also kill a third of their attackers. Shoto finished quietly, pocketing his phone. It's gone international because we are a high student. The legacy of this school and its notoriety aren't helping, nor is the fact that the son of the number 2 hero in Japan and the heiress of Japan's largest corporation being involved is truly helping. Izuku stuck out his bottom lip. Hey, I'm here too, you know? Shoto merely glanced the boy's way, raising an unimpressed eyebrow. The look caused Izuku to grimace as he returned to his uneaten food, grumbling quietly to himself. Daowa, is Izu-kun pouting 'cause he's not as popular as To-do-kun and Yao Momo? Mina cooed as she leaned her head on the sulking boy's shoulder. The boy blushed once more at Mina's affectionate actions before grumbling loud enough for the table to hear. I'm popular. IK killed more villains than Todoroki-kun and Yayurazu-san did. It was silent for a few seconds as the group slowly processed the words Izuku had spoken. Gyro snorted in disbelief, muffling a guffaw of laughter at the boy's words. Dude, she snorted again, causing Mina to begin giggling. Probably not the best stat comparison you could have used. Midoriya's face flushed red, having spoken impulsively. I didn't mean it like. He grimaced at the amusement on his friends' faces. That. Huo, Mina attacked once more, laying her head on the boy's shoulder while batting her long eyelashes. What did you mean then, Izu-kun? The boy's face only got redder and his stutters got worse. Even Todoroki was quietly laughing, shoulders shaking in mirth. See, come on, guys, Izuku cried to his friends, moaning as their laughs only got louder. Can someone tell me why we're learning the basics of trigonometry? Mina moaned to herself, flopping her head on her desk. I can still hear you, Ashido-san. Ectoplasm murmured as he began to erase the markings in the dry erase board. Class may be over soon, but I urge you to at least take it serious before the bell rings for your dismissal. Sorry, Sensei. The girl apologized with a small grimace, smiling at the chastising look from Momo. I should also mention that your Foundational Hero Studies class has been cancelled. The cloaked pro hero spoke, gaining the attention of his students. Principal Nezu has postponed your heroic academics until next week so that you may rest and enjoy your weekend. A few of the students cheered at that, whilst others groaned in annoyance, wanting to do more practical hero stuff. Enjoy your weekend, students. I know a great deal of you deserve it. The unique man's eyes gazed upon a particular trio of students before he offered a small bow, exiting the class to speak with Nezu. The students waited for the bell to signify their dismissal, with some of the students talking to each while others merely took the chance to finish their classwork. What are you guys doing over the weekend? Mina questioned with a smile, hopping up onto her desk while inadvertently flashing her underwear. Dude, Gyro cried in annoyance. What is with me seeing your damn underwear all the time? This time I went with lace. The pink-skinned girl replied while raising her eyebrows suggestively. You like 'em? You're so annoying. Gyro grumbled as she rolled her eyes, leaning against the back of her own desk. Ashido-san, please. Momo commented with a wry smirk, leaning her head on her fist. A bit of decorum would go a long way. Decorum, schmictorum. The girl blew a raspberry, sticking her tongue out towards Momo, I got enough decorum to go around, baby. I don't think you know what that word actually means, Ashido-san. Izuku mumbled quietly as he scribbled away in a notebook. Don't need to and don't wanna. The perky girl responded with a carefree grin. Decorum, noun, behavior in keeping with good taste and propriety. Synonyms: properness, correctness, and courtesy. Todoroki helpfully supplied as he scribbled away on today's assignment from midnight. I said I didn't want it, Mina cried dramatically, pointing her finger at the Icefire user. Todoroki continued to pluck away at his assignment as he replied. Wants and needs are more often than not subjective. However, I feel you truly required this information regardless of personal feelings on the subject matter. Too many syllables, Mina cried dramatically once more, pointing at the boy as if he had wronged her. I gotta agree with Pinky. Gyro commented as she plugged one of her earphone jacks into her phone. That was a bit too many syllables. Expand your vocabulary, Shoto stated in his usual blunt manner. Ouch! Mina replied with a small grin, knowing that Todoroki wasn't being rude. I felt that one right in my chesticle. She proceeded to poke her chest harshly, practically stabbing at her breasts. Ashido-san, Izuku murmured as he looked away from the girl. Why are you doing that? When the girl didn't reply, he glanced her way once more. Mina poked her breasts once more, causing the boy to groan with reddened cheeks. They may not be like Yao Momo's, but I'm no slouch, Izuku-kun. She was far too proud of her words, and the stuttering from Izuku only caused her to giggle. Do not drag me into this, Ashido-san, Momo stated dryly, mimicking Shoto as she too began to finish her assignments from earlier today. If you wish to tease Izuku, then do so without involving the rest of us. Izuku's betrayed expression caused a smile to grow on the curvy girl's face. Yaoyorozu-san. I apologize, Midoriya-san. She didn't sound sorry at all. Uo, I love having a man all to myself. Mina cooed with a smirk, cupping her face as she shifted her body towards Izuku. Ashido-san, Izuku cried with blushing cheeks. I love when you scream my name. Izuku practically fainted on the spot, causing his friends to laugh at his plight. Traitors, all of them. The green-haired teen was saved from further suffering as the bell rang loudly, signaling that their class was over. For them, and possibly many of the other classes, all of the school may be getting out early. As the students began to pack their things up, a commotion towards the entrance drew their attention. A familiar voice, one full of anger and spite, drew Izuku's attention. Oi, the hell do ya extras want? Why ya blocking the damn door? Izuku furrowed his eyebrows at Bakugo's raging words before moving past his classmates and coming up directly behind his exploding rival. The green-haired teen was taken aback at the crowd of students that had formed in the hallway, practically blocking their escape as they huddled near the large doors. The crowd was quiet for a few seconds as Izuku stretched his gaze along the unknown students. He could see the spark of recognition in their eyes as they stared back at him. There was apprehension, anxiety, and even a bit of uncertainty in their gazes. Were they scared? Of him? A student, a rather tall one with gravity-defying purple hair and purple eyes, slowly strode towards the front of the crowd. So, this is the infamous Class 1A, huh? His words were slow and measured, almost bored as he gazed into Bakugo's fierce eyes. The fuck do you want, eh? Bakugo barked crassly, one hand in his pocket while the other gripped the strap of his backpack. Language, Ida called from behind the boys, though they merely ignored his warning. Izuku decided to de-escalate the situation, knowing that Bakugo was incredibly antagonistic. Stepping up beside the boy he disliked, he spoke quietly. Hello, I'm Izuku Midoriya, class representative of 1A. See, can I ask why you're all blocking the entrance? With only a minor stutter, the green-haired teen sent a warning look to his old school bully. Bakugo, surprisingly, did not push the subject. The explosive teen merely sucked his teeth, glaring at the crowd of students blocking their path. "Ah, you're the kid who took down most of those villains at Uste, huh?" the purple-haired teen remarked, tired purple eyes shifting towards the shorter teen. "What was the number? 5? 6? You're kind of famous." Izuku's face scrunched up in confusion at the boy's tone. Was he mocking him? A familiar warmth emanated from his chest as he stared at the boy. It began as a small ember that quickly grew into a raging inferno, threatening to consume everything around him. Those words, that tone. So dismissive. So rude. So condescending. I'm sorry." Izuku slowly rolled his neck, forcing himself to calm down. "Would you be willing to repeat that?" Bakugo's gaze shifted away from the unknown purple-haired student, instead choosing to focus on his old classmate. He could feel the heat building around Deku, a telltale sign that the boy was getting angry. Normally, he'd be the reason for that anger, but now. Bakugo nearly snorted. What a change. Timid and soft, Deku. Where had the time gone? Where had the kid that he bullied relentlessly gone? "You stutter a lot, kid," the taller teen replied. "Hitoshi Shinso." He introduced himself flippantly. "You know, when I originally came here, I was expecting something a little more. I don't know. Grand?" Hitoshi tilted his head as he stared into the room, eyes appraising the various students while deliberately locking gazes with Todoroki and Yaoyorozu. "Isn't this the class who beat back a group of villains? I mean, you'd think we'd be dealing with confident superstars or something. Instead, the class prez is an insecure kid who can't control his classmates' behavior." Izuku's eyes dilated as fire immediately sprang up the length of his right arm. Before he was able to do something he'd regret, he felt the chilling grasp of ice roam along his arm, snuffing out his flames. A brief snarl escaped Izuku's lips as he stared directly into Shinso's eyes, ignoring the ice coating his right arm. "Watch your mouth," he snapped angrily, stepping directly towards the teen while slamming his forehead against the boy's own. "You don't know anything about me. Who do you think you are?" The 180 in personality stunned Shinso, forcing him to take a step back as he stared into Izuku's eyes, completely taken aback by the boy's anger. "Why are you running?" Izuku pressed with a snarl, stepping directly into the taller boy's personal space. "You got something you want to prove, don't you? Go on, prove it, I'm right here." "Yo dude, you're gonna get in trouble," Kirishima's voice sprang up. Izuku felt two pairs of arms pull on him, forcing him away from the taller boy. He bucked and struggled, nearly breaking the hold that Kirishima and Todoroki had on him. Bakugo watched as his old classmate was dragged away, kicking and spitting as he raged at the taller boy, fighting against the three boys that were now dragging him away. He turned his gaze back onto the stunned crowd before glaring at them. "You just fucked up." Bakugo growled in annoyance as he strode forward, shoulder-checking the purple-haired teen out of his way as he walked out into the hallway. "Whatever the hell you came to say to us, you can go ahead shove it up your ass. Ya just made an enemy out of 1A. Hope you're ready for war, ya damn extras." As Bakugo walked away, the stunned crowd shifted their attention back into the classroom, now keenly aware of the glaring looks from the entirety of Class 1A. Each and every student from the hero course shared the same visage, to some extent. "Leave," Yaoyorozu demanded, slowly moving forward. "I won't be asking twice. Whatever issues you have with 1A, keep to yourself. There's more important things in life than petty grievances. You all need to grow up." Her expression became harsh as she stared at the crowd of students. "I'm disappointed that we all have to share the same uniform." The crowd was rendered mute at the curvy girl's words, some of the students getting angry while others merely looked ashamed. "TCH?" Shinso scoffed before dusting off his uniform. "You all think you're so much better than us." "Because we are." Momo shot back with a glare, not caring how arrogant her words sounded. Maybe if you placed your time elsewhere instead of seething with jealousy and anger, then you'd be where we are now. We worked to get where we are. We struggled and we persevered. We're only alive because we were lucky. Do any of you think for even a second that you'd have done what we did? Huh? Answer me. When silence greeted her, she nodded her head with a snarl. TCH, that's what I thought. None of you deserve to be in this class. Crossing her arms against her chest, she ignored how Mina and Gyro came up to stand beside her. I heard what can happen after the sports festival. You really think you can take our places, huh? Momo's eyes narrowed harshly as she spat. Newsflash, you can't and you won't. If a declaration of war is what you want, then you just got it. Hitoshi stalked away angrily, glaring into Momo's eyes. We'll see. I'm gonna knock you all off that pedestal. Big words from a guy who didn't want to deal with the fire caused by his smoke. Mina snarked with a glare, crossing her arms against her chest. All you 2-bit wannabes from 1A are gonna regret this. A blonde boy with striking blue eyes spat from the crowd. We'll show you losers what 1B can really do. Bring it, Gyro barked back with a glare. Maybe if you actually had talent you'd have been in here, dumbass. Why, you little. The random boy was cut off as an incredibly large hand sprang from out of nowhere, karate chopping the boy and knocking him out cold. Sorry about that. A pretty girl with orange hair apologized, bowing to the 3 girls in 1A. I only came to make sure my classmates didn't cause any issues. Ignore this idiot, please. She bowed once more before dragging the unconscious blonde boy away. 1B, we're leaving, now, she demanded with a glare, practically daring her classmates to disagree with her. After the girl's words, a dozen or so students followed after her, heeding her demand with ease. Following the departure of 1B, the rest of the students crowding around 1A's classroom dispersed as well. What a shit show. Gyro mumbled with an annoyed sigh, closing the door to the classroom. That was unpleasant. Momo agreed with a tired sigh. Who the hell did they think they were? Barging in on us like that? Mina grumbled with an aggravated sigh. I'm fine, I'm good, let me go. The girls all turned towards the voice, watching as Izuku broke free from the restraint of his classmates, rolling his shoulders in annoyance. I told you, I'm fine, he barked in annoyance, brushing off his uniform as he glared at Kaminari, Kirishima, and Todoroki. He glanced at his arm, staring at the ice entrapping his appendage. Channeling his quirk, the ice began to slowly steam and melt as water began to drip on the classroom floor. Completely unnecessary, Todoroki-kun, he mumbled to himself, focusing on melting the ice. I disagree. The heterochromatic teen replied easily. You got off with a warning from Aizawa-sensei once already. Another disciplinary report would be suspension, or in Aizawa's case, expulsion. Izuku merely grumbled at Todoroki's words, knowing that they were true. Come on, man. You can't just use your quirk on people like that. It's unmanly. Kirishima commented with furrowed brows, crossing his arms against his chest. You know what else is unmanly? Belittling a group of kids who went through a traumatizing ordeal, forced to fight for their lives, and then mocking them for it. Izuku snapped back, glaring at his arm. So forgive me for not caring about quirk regulations in school. It's not like I almost died several times or anything. It's not like everyone looks at me differently on the streets. It's not like I have nightmares every time I close my eyes to go to sleep. At this point, tears had begun to fall from his eyes, though his expression was only that of anger. It's not like hundreds, if not thousands of people are judging me every single day for something I didn't ask for, ranting and raving online while imposing their self-righteous views on me. I'm sorry that I'm forced to live with my actions. I don't regret it. I don't regret anything. I'd do it again and again and again. I survived. An uncomfortable silence followed Izuku's words as he quietly sobbed, dropping to his haunches and sitting on the floor. I survived. I'm alive. He mumbled quietly, covering his face with his hands as he cried. Why didn't he believe his words? All of you listeners watching at home and in person, say hello to your champion of you, Ahai's annual sports festival. Momo Yaoyorozu despised her bi-weekly sessions with Hound Dog. Every conversation and session was a painful reminder of her inadequacies as a hero in training and as a person. Every word spoke from her mouth felt like ash on her tongue. The lies, the insecurities. She was no hero. She was just a coward, a child. What did All Might ever see in her? He had complimented her drive, her passion, and her heart. Momo scoffed at it all. What drive? Cleaning a beach from pollution and working out nearly 6 days a week. She wouldn't have done so had it not been for the fact that she wouldn't have been able to actually inherit One for All. Passion? TCH. Even thinking of the word made her nauseous and angry. What passion was there? She had only wanted to be a hero to escape being Momo Yaoyorozu, not because she wanted to help people and be a symbol. All she had wanted was to be her own person and not just another successful businesswoman who came from wealth. Heart? Ha! What heart? She couldn't even believe in herself. She was just an insecure child with power that didn't even belong to her. All of the sacrifices made by her successors would amount to nothing so long as she continued to wield One for All. Momo ignored the painful throbbing in her chest at the words. She didn't care that One for All disagreed with her. At the end of the day, it was all true. Momo would never be All Might. She'd never amount to something so great and powerful. She didn't deserve to wield One for All. She didn't deserve to be All Might's successor. How was she to be the next symbol of peace and hope if she couldn't even believe in herself? What manner of peace followed a coward? What hope could she inspire with her inadequacy? Momo conjured a fake smile as she bowed to Hound Dog, promising to meet with him this Friday. Her body weighed a ton, and yet Hound Dog didn't seem to notice. Not that she was surprised. She had a knack for masking her emotions and imitating someone she wasn't. The door closed with a quiet thud, and Momo was thankful that the hallway was empty. She ducked her head, spiky hair shadowing her face as she stared at the tiles on the floor. Her stomach churned painfully, causing her to hunch over. Tears began to stream down her face, and she allowed them to flow silently. Who was Momo Yaoyorozu? An arrogant rich girl who lacked talent. An intelligent girl who possessed uncapped potential. A powerful successor to a living legend. Momo shook her head, chest contracting painfully as she leaned against the walls of the hallway. Her vision blurred for a moment as she lost her footing, crashing down onto the floor. Who was Momo Yaoyorozu? A failure, a coward, an insecure child with the weight of the world on her shoulders, a little girl playing pretend hero. Momo ducked her head once more, grunting as her body spiked with pain once more, covering her mouth to muffle her cries. Momo curled in on herself as the throbbing sensation only seemed to worsen. Who was Momo Yaoyorozu? No one important. Stomach acid and bile ejected through her mouth and nose as she desperately tried to cover her cries of pain. Brownish-green liquid seeped through her fingertips, falling onto the floor beneath her while staining her pristine uniform. Another fresh lace of pain stabbed through her chest, dangerously close to her heart, and Momo could no longer muffle the cries of pain and agony. Yaoyorozu-san. Ah, how comforting. To be saved by an actual hero. Someone that embodied what it meant to be a true hero. Someone who was her polar opposite. As Momo's head cracked onto the floors of the school, she caught a glimpse of worried emerald orbs. Emerald orbs that were surrounded by a round face, specked with cute freckles. Izuku Midoriya. She's going to be okay though, right? Izuku questioned in a worried tone as he stood next to Momo's bed, watching her sleep peacefully. Recovery Girl frowned at the boy as she monitored Momo. Her eyes fell to the clipboard in her hands, and she had to force herself from frowning further. everything about what was happening was. Well, she couldn't up and tell the boy that Momo's body was deteriorating from inside out. Why exactly? Recovery Girl was still trying to ascertain the exact reason, but she suspected it had to do with Toshinori passing his quirk onto her. This was not good. With a bit of rest, yes. She lied through her teeth, placing her hands behind her back whilst hiding the clipboard. Now come on, Sunny, don't you have somewhere to be? She needed to speak with all might as soon as possible. No. Izuku shook his head with a frown, choosing to sit down beside the comatose girl. I want to make sure she's fine. Recovery Girl wanted to frown at his refusal. Stubborn boy. She knew Izuku well, or had come to know him well these past few weeks. More often than not, he himself would be sent to the infirmary, or he'd send others here. It was truly 5050 in that regard. Izuku wasn't necessarily accident-prone, but he didn't know when to stop. He'd burn himself out or end his training with extreme migraines that had him comatose. She cursed Shota for allowing the students open access to training ground gamma. Every day she had to deal with a plethora of Class 1A students being rushed into her office after school hours. They were running themselves ragged, and no one seemed to bat an eye but her. Even the most tame students of 1A would end up here. Though, not necessarily by choice, but they'd come all the same, making sure that their classmates were okay. It was as endearing as it was reckless. They were just children, damn it. She isn't going to magically get up and start walking, Midoriya. The retired pro-hero huffed out, slowly waddling to her desk to grab her personal items. Also, it is 7 in the afternoon. Yaoyorozu is going to be staying overnight. Go home, boy. The stubborn boy pulled out his phone before making a call. The dial rang twice before a voice on the other side answered. A few words were shared between the boy and, who Recovery Girl likely believed was his mother, before the boy abruptly hung up. My mother doesn't seem to mind, he replied slyly, shooting her a quick glance. Cheeky little brat. Your class camaraderie never ceases to astound me. The older woman bit out in a chagrined tone, gathering her personal items. Don't mess my office up. I mean it, problem child. Izuku grumbled at the woman's words. He wasn't that bad. You set flames to a room one time and everyone thinks you're some kind of arsonist. The door shut with a quiet click a moment later, signaling that Recovery Girl had finally left the room. Izuku sighed quietly as he leaned over Momo's bed, resting his arms and chin on the small bars of the bed. What happened, Yaoyorozu-san? He questioned to himself quietly. VRRT. Pulling his phone out, Izuku rose an eyebrow at the messages he was receiving. Ashido had created a group chat with himself, Yaoyorozu-san, Jiro-san, Todoroki-kun, and Ashido-san herself. There was several other group chats with various other classmates from 1A, but this particular group chat was for them specifically. The name? Well, Ashido-san created it, and so they didn't really have a choice but to accept it. And so, the Trauma Buddies group chat would forever live in infamy. Ashido, you still at school, Izuku-kun? Me, I'm in the infirmary with Yaoyorozu-san. Jiro, come on dude. Don't tell me you guys pushed it hard again. Last night my mom threw a fit after finding out I was overusing my quirk every day. Me, I was coming back from Gamma and was making my way to Hound Dog's office when I found Yaoyorozu-san kneeling on the ground and crying in pain. When I rushed to help her, she blacked out and slammed her head onto the ground. I'm making sure she's okay. Todoroki, it's almost 8 o'clock. How long do you plan on staying, and will Yaoyorozu be okay? Ashido, OMG, is she gonna be okay? Jiro, Jesus dude. Did RG say what was wrong? Me, she said that with a bit of rest that Yaoyorozu-san will be okay, but I don't know. I get the feeling something's wrong. Yaoyorozu-san is strong. Something doesn't seem right. Todoroki, what do you mean? Midoriya? Me, I can't explain it, but it seemed like RG was hiding something. Yaoyorozu-sen seemed to be perfectly fine during heroics today and had no problems during sparring and practice. But after a talk with Hound Dog, she's comatose and vomiting blood. It doesn't add up. Gyro. Whoa, what the hell? Slow down. Midoriya. You never said she was puking up blood. Ashido. Holy crap. Todoroki. I highly doubt a bit of bed rest will really help Yaoyorozu if that's the case. It sounds like an internal issue. Perhaps quirk-related. Did Recovery Girl say anything else about it? Yaoyorozu is the most physically fit student in 1A. It seems incredibly unlikely that whatever is affecting her could be solved with a bit of rest. Me? I thought so too, Todoroki-kun. And no, she didn't. She kind of avoided all my questions and only said that Yaoyorozu-san would be okay. It's not adding up. Gyro, the only way to find out is to wait for Yaoyorozu to wake up, I guess. Me, which is why I'm staying the night. Ashido, Mama Midoriya gonna be okay with THT. We all know how protective she can be. Doesn't help you're staying with a girl all night. Midoriya made a face at the girl's words. He grumbled quietly to himself, typing a response while trying to keep from blushing. He failed, obviously. Me. Yes, she said it was fine and that she hopes Yaoyorozu-san is okay. Gyro, let us know when she wakes up. Ashido, yep. We gotta MKE sure we're all healthy for the sports festival. CNT let those losers in 1C try to show us up. Me, they won't. And I will. Todoroki, good night, Midoriya. Update us with any more information you find out. Good night to you too as well. Ashido, awawa. No personal good nights for us to do, kun? Gyro, yay, what gives? Only Midoriya gets a personal good night? Simon, man. Todoroki has disconnected from trauma buddies. Ashido, wow, he hates us. Gyro, SMH my head. What a guy. Me, go to sleep you too. Good night, Ashido-san, Gyro-san. Ashido, daowa. A true sweetheart. Can you give me a goodnight kiss? Gyro, Elmao, yo, give me one too, dude. You have disconnected from trauma buddies. Izuku shook his head with a raging blush as he pocketed his phone. Ashido teasing him was bad enough, but when Gyro decides to step in and tag team him. Absolutely not. Those two girls were too much. Shaking his head of those thoughts, Izuku turned his gaze back on his curvy classmate. She seemed so pale and weak, a far cry from the powerful girl he had come to know. Momo was quite possibly the strongest student in 1A, both physically and quirk-wise. She was even stronger than Shoji-san, which was saying a lot considering the boy was nearly 150 pounds heavier than her on top of being a full head taller than her. Izuku suspected she could even match Sato-san's level of physical strength, but that was all conjecture on his part. He'd need to observe the girl as she weight-trained to get a proper read on her strength. To see her so weak, it was off-putting to him. She was intelligent, strong, and incredibly level-headed. More so than he was, at least. It seemed that with each day that passed, his string would grow thinner and thinner. It was only a matter of time until it fully snapped. He no longer had the same patience he once had in Aldera. Perhaps he had finally grown tired of being passive in his social life. The incident with Bakugo at the beginning of the year coupled with the Usti incident only seemed to further support this. His bi-weekly sessions with Hound Dog were both enlightening and angering. Each week he'd learn something new, and each week he'd lose just a bit more of his patience. Having been bullied for all of his younger life had caused his mentality and psyche to alter. It wasn't until he stared fighting back that he learned what freedom truly was. It all circled back to his quirk at the end of the day. Izuku was an anxious and awkward child. He lacked self-confidence and had found it extremely difficult to form bonds and friendships. He preferred the silence and kept well alone. That all changed after he started to train with his quirk. He became confident in his abilities. Though he continued to remain a recluse and self-isolated, He no longer dreaded the idea of being hurt and bullied. If anything, he grew to welcome it, because it meant that he could fight back. He was only ever confident with his fire. Hound Dog had explained that his quirk was a mental crutch when growing up, one that Izuku didn't necessarily disagree with. He felt truly alive when utilizing his flames. The familiar warmth and serenity granted to him by the heat lulled him into safety. He felt confident when channeling a torrent of flames. He felt powerful when the familiar scorch of plasma rained from his fingertips. He was a completely different person when utilizing his quirk, and Izuku didn't necessarily see anything wrong with it. Hound Dog hadn't either, thankfully, because if he had, Izuku would have stopped listening to the dog-like man. His quirk and his mother were the only two constants in his life. So long as they believed in him, then he'd continue pushing forward to his goals. Izuku sighed quietly to himself before pulling out his earbuds and connecting them to his phone. As he found some music to listen to, he reached under his chair and grabbed his book bag. Pulling out some papers and folders, he began to finish up some assignments and homework. As he continued his work while the minutes went by, he felt his eyes began to grow tired. Izuku stifled a yawn, leaning back in his chair before closing his eyes for a moment. Only for a moment, he thought. Of course, he didn't realize a moment would actually equate to nearly 3 hours. Izuku awoke with a startle, nearly jumping as his classwork and books fell from his lap. He blinked in confusion for a few moments before groaning quietly and rubbing his face. Taking his earbuds out and ignoring the silence, Izuku began to slowly pack his things up as quietly as he could, trying not to disturb Momo's sleep. "You've been here this whole time." Izuku did not scream like a little girl. Anyone who said otherwise, he'd annihilate them with his flames. "Why, Yaoyorozu-san?" There was a brief shuffle of noise as Izuku peered into the dark, squinting his eyes to see what his classmate was doing. A quiet click followed before the room was illuminated by the bedside lamp in the infirmary. "Hello, Midoriya-san." Momo greeted the boy casually as if she hadn't just given him a heart attack. Izuku threw his head back with a quiet sigh before calming his racing heart. After he was sure that his heart wasn't going to explode, he placed his belongings back down on the floor before responding. "Hey, Yaoyorozu-san, you feeling better?" Izuku noticed something off about his curvy classmate. Her face seemed like it was carved from stone, blank and unreadable as she stared into his eyes. The girl stared at him. And stared. And stared. And stared. "No, not necessarily," she finally replied, voice even and measured. Her ebony iris bored into his with an intensity he didn't expect from the girl. Anxiety burned within him like the flames he commanded as he replied. Do you need anything? Water? Food?" Momo didn't respond, choosing to turn her gaze away from the boy. Her charcoal eyes strayed towards the window of the infirmary, blankly staring out into the night sky. When she spoke, her voice was decidedly hollow. "Why do you want to be a hero, Midoriya?" Izuku was taken aback at the question. Why did he want to be a hero? But she knew the answer. Instead of voicing his confusion, Izuku spoke quietly with furrowed eyebrows. "I want to help people. I want to be the reason a random child chooses to become a hero. That they choose to be a hero to help others because it's the right thing to do." Izuku frowned at the disgust in Momo's eyes. He recognized the look easily. After all, it wasn't as if he hadn't been on the receiving end of it for the better part of a month since the Uschi incident. But he couldn't understand why Momo of all people was looking at him like that. They had both suffered because of the Uschi incident. Did she just not like his answer? Or was there something deeper here that he didn't seem to understand? "I want to help people. I want to be the reason a random child chooses to become a hero. That they choose to be a hero to help others because it's the right thing to do." Momo's eyes darkened, and she had to refrain from curling her lip. Feelings of self-loathing and anger surged beneath her veins, threatening to swallow her whole. How could she ever hope to compete with something like that? Izuku was the embodiment of what it meant to be a hero. He wanted to do good in the world because it was the right thing to do. He wanted to inspire those around him to do good because it was just the right thing to do. What could she say to that? What lies could she create to convince herself that she deserved one for all? What arguments could she make to justify keeping All Might's quirk? She ignored the stabbing pain that emanated from her chest at her words. It didn't matter what she felt. She didn't deserve this power. She wasn't worthy of possessing the power that had culminated from the sacrifices of others before her. Momo released a hollow chuckle, one dead to the world as she continued to stare out into the darkness. You really are a hero, huh, Izuku? She spared the boy a glance, taking note of his confusion and concern. Even now, he was worried about her. Why was he such a selfless person? How could he be so pure? How had he come to be like this? So many questions. Questions she didn't want to ask. Tell me, Izuku. She began slowly, furrowing her eyebrows as she continued to blankly stare out the window. If you had the strength to save everyone, would you? She already knew the answer. Why? Why are you asking me this, Yaoyorozu-san? Izuku asked with furrowed brows. Humor me, Izuku. If I had the strength, then yes, I'd do anything to accomplish that. He answered resolutely, clenching his fists while conjuring those beautiful flames of his. They shone brightly, like a beacon in the night, a bastion of strength and hope, threatening to illuminate the darkness of the world. Ha! It was almost like it was fate. Momo smiled hollowly. What do you know about All Might's quirk? Izuku's confused expression was amusing. Ooh, well, I know about as much as everyone else. It isn't public knowledge, but he likely possesses an emitter quirk that augments his physical capabilities. With the basic knowledge of what he can do and everything he's shown to be capable of. It isn't as simple as a strength enhancement quirk or super speed. He's been shown to change the weather with a simple punch, but has also been known to leap miles with a single jump. The shockwaves formed from his punches have crushed steel and demolished buildings. I, personally, believe he has an emitter quirk that augments his strength, but on a ridiculous scale. His strength is almost otherworldly. Momo's smile became a bit more genuine at Izuku's words. He really did idolize the man. No one could be All Might, that was true. When he eventually retired, the world would suffer the consequences. The beacon of hope and peace would no longer deter the nastiest of individuals this world had to offer. Crime and death would skyrocket. It was harrowing. The knowledge that the world could change on a dime terrified Momo. She, solely, was to be the replacement to All Might's legacy. A burden she hadn't considered before agreeing to accepting his quirk. You are fairly close to the true answer, Izuku. Momo spoke quietly, bringing Izuku out of his speculative mumblings. And yet, you're incredibly far away as well. Izuku eyed the curvy girl strangely. What do you mean? Yaoyorozu-san, do you know something the world doesn't? Instead of answering his question, she responded with another question. Tell me, Izuku, do you know of a man that used to call himself All for One? Izuku furrowed his eyebrows at the name, shaking his head negatively. Momo idly nodded her head, slowly sitting up in the infirmary bed while continuing to stare out into the darkness. When quirks first began to surface, the world grew into chaos. Crime exploded as those with unique power began to abuse it. Pro-heroes didn't exist in the pre-quirk era. Vigilantes roamed freely, skirting the law and permanently dealing with those who would abuse their newfound powers. As the world progressed, with the terms heroes and villains being coined, so too did the underworld thrive. Society flipped on its head, forced to pick the pieces up as men and women turned on one another. Prejudices and racism ran rampant, becoming even more violent as society shunned those who were different. Those with mutation quirks were vilified by society, villainized for something out of their control. She paused for a moment, closing her eyes as she spoke softly. Society became nothing more than a bloody war ground as those with mutational quirks fought back against their oppressors. Hundreds of thousands suffered due to their genes. Society very nearly collapsed due to a single man. One who fanned the flames between those without quirks and those with them. That man. Momo slowly opened her eyes before shifting her gaze to Izuku. Called himself All for One. He possessed a quirk that allowed him to take away and give quirks to others. For those who wished to become normal, he granted them their wish. He took their quirks, forcing them into servitude. Vice versa to those who didn't possess a quirk and wished to have one. Momo bowed her head as she continued. You're wondering, what does this have to do with All Might's quirk, aren't you? When he gave her a hesitant nod, she continued. All for One possessed a younger brother. A brother who at the time did not seemingly possess a quirk. Due to All for One's exploits, the younger brother detested his villainous sibling. But he couldn't properly fight against his brother, who had amassed so many powerful quirks. Like the twisted man he was, All for One gifted his brother with a quirk that would stockpile power in his body. In retaliation, the younger brother fought against All for One. He failed in his endeavor to eliminate his older brother, trusting in others to finish what he couldn't start. Here, Momo laughed in a bitter manner, shaking her head. What All for One hadn't known was that his younger brother actually did have a quirk. The opposite of his own, actually. The man had the ability to transfer quirks to others. His stockpiling quirk managed to somehow merge with his original quirk and the rest. Momo watched as Izuku slowly began to connect the dots. His analytical mind pushed into overdrive as he mumbled and muttered quietly, managing to make sense of the story. That would explain so many things. Izuku began to chew on his thumb for a minute before suddenly coming to a startling realization. You'd only know this if you were... Momo's smile only seemed to grow more hollow. Ha! That analytical brain of yours is second to none. Izuku wasn't smiling. Momo supposed he had no reason to. All Might's real name is Toshinori Yagi. Momo spoke quietly, staring directly into her classmate's eyes. You remember him, don't you? Izuku idly nodded his head, face hardening as he stared into Momo's eyes. All Might passed his quirk unto you, didn't he? Momo glanced away from the teen, nodding her head. Yes, for the last 2 years I have possessed the quirk known as One for All. Momo lifted her arm up before a pink glow emanated above her skin. Her arm bulked up significantly, a pink sheen of energy coating the appendage. I possess the original quirk designed to fight back against All for One, a man who very nearly killed All Might himself years ago. Izuku furrowed his eyebrows before shaking his head. Wait, what do you mean? That All for One guy was still alive after all those years? The guy would have been over 100 years old. Momo sighed to herself quietly. He managed to keep himself alive, likely with a quirk that rendered him ageless or something to that effect. However, while All Might had defeated the man, he had been mortally wounded by All for One. As the years have passed, All Might's power has begun to deteriorate. He can only use a fraction of his original power and has been limited to barely 3 hours of strength a day. Izuku was quiet for a moment as he processed the girl's words. Another sudden realization hit him directly after her words. So, that day when we were at Asage, when 13 held up 3 fingers. Momo looked away, nodding her head. All Might wasn't there because he had used up his power earlier that day. The room became unbearably hot not a moment later. Momo's gaze snapped towards her classmate, watching as flames swirled around Izuku, spewing from his body dangerously. The sheer anger on the boy's face. We suffered, because All Might used. The green-haired teen grit his teeth angrily as his flames continued to roar. Tell me, it's a lie. Faced with such anger, Momo did the one thing she could. I'm sorry, Izuku. She mumbled quietly, wincing as the boy's flames only seemed to grow hotter. Sweat began to cascade down her face, and she was surprised that the fire alarms hadn't gone off. Izuku, please. It's getting extremely hot. At Momo's words, Izuku's flames died out. Those beautiful flames of his sputtered out weakly as tiny wisps of embers wafted in the room. Why? Izuku mumbled to himself, leaning forward in his chair and covering his face with his hands. Why did we have to suffer? It could have been avoided. Momo could offer the boy no comforting words. She had processed her anger with her sensei the day it had happened. She had yelled and ranted, belittled the man for his short thinking and recklessness, and when her voice grew hoarse, she had cried and sobbed. Momo couldn't imagine the emotions Izuku was feeling. To have such an idealized vision of a person you respected so much, to the point of obsession, had to be a rude awakening. Izuku's entire philosophy and goal in life was to imitate All Might, to be like All Might. To know that that indomitable pillar of strength was nothing more than a facade. It had to sting something fierce. Momo did not speak, allowing Izuku to process everything he had heard. She would worry about revealing All Might's weakness another time. She could trust Izuku. A tired sigh escaped Izuku as he leaned back in his chair, covering his face with his arm. This is so much to take in. Momo only remained quiet, knowing it was only going to get worse. There is a reason. She started quietly, gaining the boy's attention. I've told you this, Izuku. When the boy uncovered a portion of his face, Momo continued. I want you. Here, she hesitated for the briefest of moments, clenching the thin fabric that covered her body. She glanced over towards the green-haired teen before opening her mouth and speaking. I want you to take All Might's quirk from me. I want you to take All Might's quirk from me. Izuku's mind grinded to a halt as he processed Momo's request. The desperation in her tone, the pain in her eyes. Why, Yayurazu-san, he stuttered, removing his arm from his face. I see can't do that. Momo's expression only grew more desperate, eyes watering as she spoke frantically. Please, I'm begging you, Izuku, please, please, take one for all. I'll do anything. I swear it. Izuku was taken aback by the girl's words. Her tone bordered on manic, charcoal eyes wide as she stared at him like some deranged follower belonging to a cult. Money? She pleaded hopelessly, gesturing with both of her hands toward the boy. I can give you anything. I swear. Fame? Power? Notoriety? What do you want? I can give you it all. Just please, please. Izuku found himself backing away from the now manic girl. Gone was the confident and calm girl he come to know. Her bloodshot eyes, stained with tears, wide and crazed as she stared at him. No, through him. As if he was some kind of prophet, a god that would whisk away her problems and bestow joy upon her. Momo, he whispered quietly, slowly standing to his feet while back-stepping away from the girl. I can't do that. Her expression only grew more crazed, causing his heart to clench tightly at the sight. Yes, you can, she gestured wildly once more, fresh tears falling down her face. All you need is my DNA. It's simple. It would only take a second. You wouldn't even feel the transfer. Izuku? Dilated pupils overshadowed the whites of her eyes as she shifted her body towards him, swinging her legs over the bed. The action caused Izuku to step away once more, now becoming cautious of the manic girl. If Momo was aware of his discomfort and worry, then she did little to truly show it. I'm begging you, Izuku. And though tears continued to stream down her face, Momo didn't seem the least bit sad or depressed. She looked mad, crazed. Relieve me of this burden. Take it away. I beg of you. I can't. I can't be the next All Might. I won't. I can't. What do you want? When he hesitated to answer, her expression shifted fiercely. What do you want? She screamed hoarsely, falling out of the infirmary bed while landing harshly on her knees. Izuku's knee-jerk reaction was to rush to the girl's side. making sure that she'd be okay. However, he refrained from doing so, truly worried for his safety and what his friend would do in her mental state. Momo, I need you to calm down. He slowly rose his hands, palms facing the girl as she struggled to rise to her feet. Let's just talk. Oh, okay. No. Momo denied while shaking her head, struggling to rise to her feet due to her weakened state. I don't want to talk, Izuku. I want to be free. She rose her eyes to his, staring into his eyes as if he was her savior. You want to be a hero, right, Izuku? Right? Then please. The curvy girl bowed her head, slamming her forehead onto the ground with a harsh crack. Save me, Izuku. Izuku's heart clenched painfully at the sight, hearing the sheer hopelessness and desperation in the girl's voice. All Might chose you, Momo. Who am I to? Fuck what All Might chose. He was a fool for choosing me. I don't deserve this quirk. The girl screamed harshly, throat scratching painfully as she raised her bloodied face, pinning Izuku in place. I don't want this anymore. It can't be me. She clenched her eyes tightly while shaking her head side to side. I'd rather die than continue on living with this quirk. Her eyes shifted dangerously, putting Izuku on edge as she continued to speak. Izuku, you wanted to be a hero, right? Her tone caused the hairs on the back of Izuku's neck to stand on edge. There was a certain level of calmness to them that chilled him to his bone, rooting him in place. Why you wanted to save people, right? Because it was the right thing to do. That's what you said, right? Right? Izuku chose to remain silent, desperately trying to think of anything that could diffuse this situation. A pink glow emanated from Momo's exposed arm. The girl reached towards her arm before pulling out an item that was distinctly small with a handle. A glint of steel followed shortly after, briefly reflecting the light of the moon. Izuku's eyes widened to saucers upon noticing the knife in Momo's hand. His blood turned to ice as he shifted his gaze to her broken smile. Momo released a laugh that caused Izuku's stomach to churn. The manic glint in her eyes made him nauseous. His blood pounded through his body as wisps of flames stretched along his fingertips. I took those people's lives. Momo spoke quietly, haphazardly wielding the blade in her hand. The recoil from the sniper. I still feel it. I still feel those ejected casings, burning my skin as I loaded round after round. The girl shook her head with a smile, tears falling down her bloody face. The smell of gunpowder. The harsh crack of the bullet. A quiet grunt escaped her lips as she finally managed to rise to her feet. What kind of hero am I, Izuku? She asked as she tilted her head, spiky hair covering a portion of her face as she haphazardly twirled the blade between her fingers. Izuku swallowed the saliva in his mouth as he spoke calmly. Momo, drop the knife, please. No, I don't think I will. She responded wistfully, slowly shaking her head. You're going to have to make me, Izuku. Momo, please. Don't make me do this. Izuku pleaded with a strained expression as flames began to surface along his hands and arms. Momo smiled. It was a rather sad smile. One way or another, you're gonna be a hero, Izuku. Momo took a step forward, which in turn caused Izuku to take a step backward. Momo, please, put the knife down. Another step, another retreat. I need you to save me, Izuku. I can't take what rightfully belongs to you, Momo. If you don't believe in what All Might says, then believe in me. Please, Momo. It doesn't belong to me. I don't want it anymore. Take it, Izuku. Grant me the peace I want. Izuku's back impacted against the wall, but he didn't dare take his eyes off the girl. You're wrong, Momo. That quirk is yours now. It belongs to you. It's a part of you. His words caused the girl to briefly pause in her approach. My only quirk is creation. Izuku shook his head. You're wrong, Momo. One for All was entrusted to you by someone who believed in you. Tashinori gave you that quirk. Not All Might. He believed in you. It doesn't matter why. All that matters is that it's yours. Momo's face twisted in pain at Izuku's words. I don't deserve it. Yes, you do, he exclaimed fiercely, staring into her eyes. You're the strongest person in 1A. I've seen the work you've no doubt put in to master that quirk. You're one of, if not the, smartest person in class. You're quick on your feet and learn from your mistakes. You want to be a hero to do good, don't you? Momo just shook her head with tears in her eyes. I wanted to be a hero to escape from my family name, Izuku. What about that screams heroics to you? Izuku shook his head with a frown. Maybe when you were younger, sure, but now, is that still how you feel? Momo's eyes strayed away from the teen as she remained silent, clutching the blade between her hands with white knuckles. Why are you lying to yourself? You deserve your spot in one just like the rest of us. What makes you so undeserving of one for all? What makes you think you can't be as great as All Might? Why, you wouldn't understand, she screamed back fiercely, hands shaking as she clutched the blade between her hands. I just don't. Then help me understand. Momo, Izuku yelled back in response, matching her ferocity. Let me help you. Why? She screamed angrily, using one of her hands to wipe the stray tears from her eyes. Why can't you just take it away? You said it yourself, Momo. Izuku responded calmly, taking a cautious step towards his classmate. You need someone to save you. I'm going to be that person. He continued to slowly approach the crying girl, speaking calmly as he did. Drop the knife, Momo. Just talk to me, okay? Let me help you. Momo's eyes frantically flicked from the blade in her hand to Izuku's approaching form. Even after all this, you still want to help me? Of course I do. He responded firmly, continuing to close the distance with the girl. Why wouldn't I? Momo could only laugh at the incredulity of it all. You're something else, Izuku. The knife slowly fell from Momo's hands, clattering on the ground uselessly. As Izuku slowly reached the manic girl, he kicked the blade away before gently grabbing a hold of Momo's shaking hands. He slowly guided her back to the infirmary bed, gently coaxing her to lay back down and rest. Rest, Momo. He glanced around the room, slowly rising to his feet before searching for some bandages and alcohol. He returned to her side a moment later, first aid supplies in hand. I'm going to clean that gash. Hold still, okay? The curvy girl allowed Izuku to do as he pleased, energy spent after her manic breakdown. She hissed quietly as the boy dabbed her forehead with a cotton ball. The stinging bite of the alcohol burned harshly, sobering her thoughts. With each second that passed, Momo's self-loathing only grew. Shame filled her heart as she clenched her eyes shut, unwilling to look Izuku in his eyes. She had almost... What had she been thinking? Was she truly so gone that she'd attack a friend? What the fuck? I'm so sorry, she whispered quietly, tears falling down her cheeks as Izuku continued to dab the gash in her forehead. Let's keep this between us, yeah? He responded softly before applying the bandages to Momo's forehead. Besides, I've dealt with worse. You have? No, Izuku replied almost instantly, managing to crack a smile on Momo's face. He double-checked the bandages on the girl's face before nodding his head and returning to the seat beside the bed. Get some rest, Yaoyorozu-san. A tired yawn escaped the girl's lips as she turned her head towards the boy, eyes growing soft as she met his gaze. Back to formalities, huh? If you prefer, I can call you Momo from now on. I would like that, Izuku. Good night, Momo. Thank you. Izuku only pursed his lips at the girl's quiet response. He monitored her for the next 10 minutes, making sure she had actually fallen asleep before allowing himself to rest as well. Bowing his head with a tired sigh, Izuku proceeded to cover his eyes with one hand. Who did the heroes rely on when the day was over? Who was there for them when the stress and fatigue could no longer be ignored? Who was to be their hero when they needed it most? Was it a blessing to always stand strong in the face of adversity? Or was it a curse? Was a strong human truly strong because they possessed strength? Or were they truly strong because they were human? These were questions that Izuku often wondered about. Things that nagged at his brain, keeping him up at night as he stared at the ceiling of his bedroom. Was the path of a hero just a glorified fairy tale? A golden brick road that led to fantasies of grandeur and ecstasy? Or was it something more sinister? A winding path that only truly led to one conclusion. What was his purpose in life? To bring change? To do good? To inspire others to follow in his footsteps? Izuku didn't truly know. The only thing he could do was place one foot in front of the other. If others chose to follow, then he'd gladly lead them. All he truly had to do was take the first step. Was tonight's event a precursor to his future as a hero? Could he talk someone off the ledge? Did he have the stomach to best the horrors of the human psyche when at their lowest? He didn't know. Perhaps that was for the best. All he did know was that he couldn't give up. An obstacle was only an obstacle until it wasn't. Everyone failed in life. No one was perfect. Izuku knew that more than anyone, he'd never strive for perfection, but he was devoted all the same. What was that old saying? Devotion inspires bravery, bravery inspires sacrifice, and sacrifice. A fitting quote for those who chose to risk their lives for a better tomorrow. Izuku released a quiet yawn before pulling out his phone and texting a response to the group chat. Momo is going to be okay. She's just been incredibly stressed lately. Take it easy on her tomorrow, guys. Izuku stared down at his message for a few moments before sighing quietly and leaning back against his chair. He closed his eyes a moment later, trying to forget everything that happened tonight. Of course, it didn't happen, but it was the thought that counted. The days came and went. Classes continued on as usual for one as the U, a sports festival neared. Classwork, homework, assignments, heroics, and training. It was an ever-repeating cycle for the 20 students. Training Ground Gamma had basically become their second homes as they continued to train and experiment with their quirks after school hours. Some took their training a lot more seriously than others, but all that mattered was that the effort was being put in. Some of the students preferred to train by themselves, i.e. Bakugo, whilst others, like the patented trauma buddies, trained together as a group. Despite knowing it was a competition that would end in a tournament-style bracket of 1v1s, the students of WANA didn't seem to care. They shared tips and tricks with one another, offered aid where it was needed, and shared information about their abilities when needed. "You guys nervous?" Gyro questioned as she sat atop one of the various tables provided in their waiting room. "Only a lil," Mina answered in her usual carefree tone. "There's gonna be like millions of people watching. No pressure." Izuku made a choking noise at the reminder. Millions? Wow. You'd think the guy who was the most obsessed with heroes would know the exact number of people who tune in to watch the U, a sports festival. Gyro remarked with a smirk. Approximately 10 million viewers, usually peaking around 35 million in the grand finals. This is all cable and live service and doesn't include streaming numbers. Izuku answered almost robotically, causing his friends to smile in amusement. Wow, so more like 100 million, huh? Gyro reaffirmed with a grin. Izuku's previous bravado and confidence disappeared as he made another choking sound. "It will be okay, Midoriya," Todoroki assured his friend calmly. "It's not as if everyone in the entire world will be watching you, even more so now than the Uchi incident." What was supposed to make Izuku feel better only did the opposite. "Why, you guys are going to give me chest pains," Izuku murmured with a grimace. "I'm only 15. Mina tackled the boy, landing atop his abdomen with a carefree giggle. "Don't you worry your little head, Izuku-kun. Mina-chan's gonna make it a little better." Her teasing tone had slowly tapered off into a sensual one, and it made Izuku feel things. Ashido-san, he squeaked with a blush. So ha do it, Mina cooed sensually as she placed her hands on her cheeks, slowly rolling her hips side to side on the boy's stomach. Guys, Izuku called out to his friends, desperately looking for their aid. Gyro's back was facing the two, earphone jacks plugged into her phone as she blasted music. Todoroki had his phone up to his ear, having an incredibly fake phone call with his mother. Momo herself was filing her nails with an innocent expression as she gazed around the room. Guys, Izuku yelled once again, completely in disbelief that his friends would ignore his plight. Don't act like you don't like it, Izu-kun. Mina winked playfully before deciding to relent on her favorite teasing target. She rose to her feet, offering the freckled boy a hand, which he took with a quiet grumble. Why do you always tease me, Ashido-san? He grumbled quietly, rubbing his face to stave off his embarrassment. Your reactions are cute, Mina replied simply, grin fixed on her face. If you didn't make a big deal about it every time, she wouldn't target ya, dude. Gyro stated simply, smirking to herself as she fiddled with her phone. Or perhaps Ashido-san teases you because she's incapable of mustering up the confidence to confess her true feelings for you. Momo piped up with a coy smile, side-eyeing the girl. A faint sheen of red dusted along Mina's cheeks as she gave Momo a warning look. Momo's smile only grew more coy as she rose her hands, placating the girl. It would explain so much, Todoroki mumbled, thumbing his chin as he nodded along to Momo's words. PFFT, you're the last person to be saying that, do. Gyro snorted with a smirk. I know enough, he replied simply. Common from the guy with 3 moms? I don't buy it. Gyro snorted once more. I know. I'm simply overqualified in this manner. Todoroki agreed with a nod. That's now what she meant, Todoroki-kun. Izuku responded with a light blush, sending Mina a glance. I know what she meant. The dual-haired boy replied easily. Oh yeah, Mina challenged with a grin. What she mean then, to-do-kun? Todoroki was silent as 4 pairs of eyes zeroed in on him. He shot each of them a glance, stalling for time he didn't really have. Odd. Do you hear that? The dual-haired boy questioned, feigning interest somewhere else while raising one of his hands to his ear. It's the sound of me not understanding social cues. Todoroki immediately walked away, not even bothering to entertain his friends and their teasing ways. The quartet began to laugh as they followed after their friend, lightly teasing him. You ready for this, Deku? Izuku offered his old bully a cursory glance, curious as to why the boy had chosen to strike up conversation. Are you? He shot back evenly, side-eyeing the boy. The two of them stood at the entrance of the tunnel, awaiting for Present Mike to announce their arrival. This dark tunnel was the only thing separating them from being seen by millions. Behind them was the rest of their class, staying a few feet back to either calm themselves or mentally psyche themselves up. Bakugo offered the boy a wicked smirk, small crackles of explosions emitting from the palms of his hands. Do ya even need to ask? These fucking extras won't know what hit 'em. Izuku eyed his old rival and bully curiously. Not that I necessarily care, but why are you speaking to me, Bakugo? I thought you hated my guts. The volatile teen offered the green-haired teen a glance before sneering. TCH, don't get ahead of yourself, Deku. I still do hate you. His beady red eyes focused on the darkness leading towards the stadium. You've changed since Aldera, Deku. He was silent for a few moments before turning back towards the boy. But we got the same goal today. To smash those stupid fuckers and prove to M that 1A is better than everyone else. While Izuku didn't necessarily agree with how Bakugo said the words, he did ultimately agree with them. Izuku offered his old bully a single nod as he responded. That's the plan, and if we meet in the finals, I'm not holding back on you, Bakugo. A fierce smirk painted the blond boy's face as he stared into Izuku's eyes. Good, give me 110 fucking %. It'll be all the better for when I eventually crush you, Deku. Izuku merely narrowed his eyes at the boy and chose to forego a response. Not that it was necessarily needed. Both rivals understood how the other felt. All they had to do was prove themselves in the events to come. And now, without further ado, I welcome you, the villain slayers, the inexperienced heroes in training that beat back a vicious group of villains and left them with their tails between their legs. I give you the talented and incredibly gifted class of 1A. Izuku's face hardened at Present Mike's words as he immediately led his class towards the entrance of the tunnel. His heart thumped with excitement, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he and his classmates neared the end of the tunnel. The sheer roar of the stadium threatened to deafen Izuku and his classmates as they exited the tunnel, exposed to the brilliant lights and sights of the crowd. Thousands upon thousands of people roared and cheered from their seats, incoherent chants and mindless screams of approval. Surreal, huh? Izuku turned his gaze toward the voice, slightly surprised he had even been able to hear Gyro. Izuku offered the girl a small smile as he responded. Yeah, let's do our best, Gyro-san. The petite girl offered her friend a grin as she responded. I'll see you in the finals, Green Bean. Better watch out. You're on, he challenged back, sharing a grin with the girl. The roars from the crowd only seemed to grow louder and louder as each and every class was announced, forced to stand shoulder to shoulder with one another in front of an elevated arena platform that would be the final event for the day. Hello, Midnight greeted in a sensual tone, dressed in her hero outfit with a microphone in one hand and her signature whip in the other. The dominatrix woman cracked her whip with a wink, posing provocatively as she did so. Are you all ready for a show? She questioned loudly, trying to amp up the crowd. It was a success if the deafening roar from the crowd was anything to go by. Oh my ye, she licked her lips while cracking her whip once more. You're all so excited, I'm getting wet just at the thought. Izuku choked on his spit, pounding his chest with one hand as Gyro and Todoroki mimed his actions to his back, trying to aid the boy. Before we begin with today's events, I'd like to welcome a special someone to the stage who has a few choice words to say. Midnight's vivid blue eyes scanned the students beneath her, honing in on her target. Allow me to welcome to the stage 1A's very own class representative, Izuku Midoriya. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Izuku slowly made his way to the front of the stage. Each step he took, his body seemed to grow heavier and heavier. Anxiety flowed through his body as finally reached Midnight, accepting the microphone with only a minor tremble. Izuku closed his eyes for a brief moment, calming himself down as the arena stadium became eerily silent. Just breathe. In. Out. Izuku's eyes slowly opened as he stared down at the various students below him. Over 200 pairs of eyes were locked onto him, patiently waiting to see what he had to say. Those 200 pairs couldn't compete with the possible millions that were likely to be watching as of this moment. In. Out. My name is Izuku Midoriya. He began softly, green eyes flicking to his friends who all possessed smiles on their faces. His anxiety eased somewhat at their encouraging expressions. I had a whole speech written out, but well, I seem to be blanking. So I guess I'll just start by saying this. A month ago, my face was plastered all over the internet and news. An infamous event that everyone came to know as the Usj incident. Myself, alongside that of my 19 other classmates and friends, were all attacked by a group of villains whose goal was to eliminate the symbol of peace. Izuku closed his eyes as he spoke. We were forced to defend ourselves, doing what was necessary to survive. I, alongside 2 of my very close friends, made decisions in the heat of the moment that will forever affect us. He paused for a moment, unwilling to open his eyes and be subjected to the scrutinization of millions of individuals. On that day, I lost my innocence. I'll never get it back. I wasn't conscious of my decisions. I was only focused on saving my friends and making sure that we all walked out alive. What I lost that day, I'll never recover." He clenched the microphone tightly, voice cracking with emotion. "I may have lost my innocence that day, but it didn't break me. It only made me stronger. What it did do was strengthen my resolve." Izuku finally opened his eyes, gazing directly into the camera in front of him. "My name is Izuku Midoriya, and I don't regret a single thing that happened at Usja. My hands may be bloodied, but at least my friends and classmates made it home that day. If I have to shoulder the burden for others, then I'll do so. I'll become the next beacon of hope. I'll shoulder the weight of the world so others don't have to. I'll be the one to save the day." With a smile on my face, screaming, "I am here." Izuku very nearly clasped his hands over his ears as the crowd practically exploded after his speech. A look of awe painted his features as the crowd chanted and raved, singing his praises as if it was some kind of gospel. He proceeded to pass the microphone back to Midnight, who accepted the item with a wicked smile. "Now, I don't know about all of you, but I'm definitely feeling an extra tingle down there, if you know what I mean." Midnight spoke into the mic, getting the crowd all rowdy once more. "Now, let's get started. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through What If Introvert Deku Had a Flame Quirk. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to Razuhfy for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on fanfiction.net for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you guys in the next video.